Your culture is the one constant of any organisation. If you don't intentionally engineer it, it will engineer you. Starting a team meeting with, let's pause and let's just catch the good. Catch the right behaviours, not just the right results. If we only celebrate results, individuals who get those great results, whilst they are not being a great teammate, then we're rewarding bad behaviour. And that's really toxic to your culture. You might get short-term results, but you will suffer in the long run. Fundamental difference between pro sport and business. The train to play ratio. Pro sport, train 90% of the time to play 10%. In business, it's the other way around. We 99% play and 1% train. We should be training and practicing with each other, because if we get it right inside, it becomes our customer and client experience outside.
How do you create a psychologically safe environment?
Safety overrides progress.
Welcome to The Edge of Possible, the podcast dedicated to helping you achieve extraordinary things. I'm your host, Cameron Atlas, and together, let's unlock your edge. We've been conditioned to think of culture as the soft stuff of business, the perks, the parties, and the ping pong. Today's guest, though, Emile Studham, argues it's a structural system that must be engineered in order to build a high-performing team. Emile brings a unique blend of behavioral science and pro sports discipline to the corporate world. He's learned firsthand that great teams don't just happen by accident. They are built through what he calls intentional engineering. In this episode, we strip away the fluff of corporate buzzwords and get right into the mechanics of how human beings actually cooperate. Emile breaks down why catching the good, as he calls it, is a strategic necessity, not just a nice to have, and why protecting your team from brilliant jerks is one of the most important moves a leader can make. We also go deep into the tactical side of leadership. We talk through a framework for giving feedback that actually lands, how to use intermissions to reset team dynamics before they break, and the critical difference between training and playing in a business context. If you're leading a team, running a business, or just want to understand the science of how we work better together, this conversation gives you the blueprint to build a culture that wins. That's coming right up here on The Edge of Possible. Emile, you have spent years helping organizations build high-performing cultures. What does it really take to build a high-performing team?
Starting off with a loaded question. I love it, mate. Great to be with you. I think, it's a term I like to call intentional engineering. I think there has to be way more intention in the way that we set up our organizations today. The world is more complex, integrated than it's ever been, and it's only getting more complex and integrated. So if leaders of corporate organizations don't intentionally engineer their work environments, right, because the environment dictates so much of our behavior. And when you think about culture, it really is behavior driven, right, because you want your culture to drive your performance. To drive your performance, you have to look at your culture through the lens of behavior, because behaviors get results, actions get outcomes. So intentional engineering is the term that I love to use, because I love the word engineer, because it's three words in one: design, build, and maintain a system or structure. And your culture is, I firmly believe, when you really sort of break it down to really sort of first principles, it's the one constant of any organization, right? The market changes, people come and go. There's all these different variables that come in to an organization in general, but the one constant from the day that you sign off on your business number with whatever city or country you're in, you have a culture to the day that the business ends or you move on, right? So that one constant, if you don't intentionally engineer it, I say it will engineer you. And so that's we can break that down as we go through today's chat too, mate.
Yeah. What do people have to be thinking about then when it comes to intentionally engineering that in a world that is like getting crazier and crazier? Like there's just so much happening, so much change, so much stuff that we don't even know where it's going to go, so much uncertainty.
Yeah.
And so like, has things changed over the years? Because you've been doing this for a long time now. So
the complexity, the antidote to complexity is simplicity. Right. And so we use a model that was first started in Australian pro sport, and we've now morphed it and expanded into the corporate sector over here in North America. And the one thing I love about sport is that there's a practicality to everything, right? But also sport is so behavior driven. Like you're literally watching people behave, right? And there's the repetition of the basics, right? And there's systems and plays that they repeat and repeat and repeat. I have found that there are transferable, simple and practical tools that can be ritualized into organizations, corporate organizations, that then you are intentionally engineering the environment. So I'll give you an example, right? Just the start of a meeting. We can fall trap to just getting into the meeting and getting straight into the mechanics without actually doing any type of check-in on energy levels, where people are at. Some people could be up, down, whatever, turn around. But just starting a team meeting with, let's pause and let's just catch the good. Let's catch the good of what's happened since our last meeting. In the context of this meeting, you could give a teammate a shout out, you could share a win, you could share a challenge, but I like to call them catch the good stories. And it was the impetus of my TED talk. Catch the good, catch the right behaviors, not just the right results. So again, as we work through today's chat, a big thing I'll talk about is building a cooperation code or a culture code, which is for us a combination of purpose, principles and behaviors. For our smaller companies, it's vision, principles and behaviors. But that code and it's a triangle. I love the triangle shape because it's the strongest shape there is. That code is the centerpiece of your culture and how you cooperate. So if you can tell stories through those behaviors, through your purpose on a consistent fashion, because so much of culture is built through storytelling, that is a simple way to set up your team meetings and own that environment, right? Because the other way is just to get straight into getting into what did you do, what are we going to do, and we haven't just checked in and energetically got in alignment before we start to get into the actual mechanics of the meeting. That is intentionally engineering the environment to create your desired culture. And there's many little practical rituals that you can embed into your organization that maintains that environment that you want to drive those right behaviors.
Let's talk then behaviors versus results, because behaviors can lead to results, but also a bit of luck can lead to results, and 100%. You might not be executing on certain behaviors. So let's talk behaviors.
Yeah, there's luck involved 100%. I mean, we saw that through COVID, right? Some industries got lucky and just exploded, like hand sanitizer, for example, right? And some industries got smashed, like restaurants, right? So there's a bit of luck, that's for sure. But one thing that we can control are our behaviors, right? The behaviors that we accept and reward of each other. Again, dictated by the environment, which is why I'm so big on intentionally engineering your work environments to optimize human cooperation, because we want more cooperation. Cooperation will come when we live those behaviors of our code on a consistent fashion. And if we can habitualize them through rituals, then you essentially winning becomes a habit, right? Now, will you always win? Absolutely not. But you'll give yourself the best chance. Now, if we only, catch the right result and celebrate results, we can behave badly and get good results in the business world.
Really good.
Right? And so now, if we then go and reward and laud those individuals who get those great results, whilst they are not being a great teammate, in fact, maybe even pushing teammates out of the way or having to step over them and do bad behavior to get those results, then we're rewarding bad behavior. And that's really toxic to your culture. You might get short-term results, but you will suffer in the long run. And if you can protect your organization of those individuals, which I talk about in the TED Talk as being sort of brilliant jerks, as Reed Hastings from Netflix talks about.
Yeah.
And, I think back at that, Bill Walsh book, The Score Will Take Care of Itself. I'm pretty sure I remember there being a part of that book where he said, my number one job was to keep bad eggs out of the organization. One bad egg is a virus and will infiltrate 10. And then next thing you know, it can infiltrate your whole organization. So protecting your organization from those high performers that behave badly is integral to building a high performing culture, particularly in today's interconnected, complex environment. It's more important than ever before.
Makes me think about, you've got a a bowl of lemons and one of them gets a little bit moldy,
Yep.
Very quickly, like the other stuff, like it travels across.
Yeah. The
you know?
moss, yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it, rapidly you ain't got no lemons left, man. So
100%.
and in you said, as you mentioned, in today's connected world, those behaviors that could have been within a specific conversation or a specific team, if you will, can infiltrate the entire organization really, really quickly, and not just in work hours. I think it's the same like with school and bullying and things like that, is that it's infiltrated, in many ways. I know back in Australia, there's bans on that with those that are at this point in time 16 and younger, because of, largely one of those issues. And so, I can absolutely see that, of keeping those bad eggs out. So how do we go about then determining what behaviors we should actually be celebrating and catching when it comes to the good?
Yeah, look, for us, it's a co-creation exercise, right? And if you can engage as much of your organization as you possibly can, and it gets a bit complicated when you get to the big organizations, right? So I work in enterprise a lot of the time with my executive teams. And I'm really lucky. I do keep a couple of smaller companies. I like the smaller companies because it's where I played for a number of years, where I was going through my sort of leadership journey, and I have a real soft spot for it. And also you can have such a big impact on a team that's under 50 to 100 people really quickly. When you're working with a director level or a VP level on their team, inside of a 25,000 person organization, then each line of business tends to have its own culture, right? But irrespective of the dynamic that we're working with, there has to be an element of co-creating the code, right? What are the behaviors that we are accepting today that's holding us back from being the best team we can be? That's a great question. And you conduct that exercise in small groups, and then facilitate that conversation as one group. And every time I do it, we see patterns. Everyone's seeing the same thing. Right. Now we've got a list of what's not working. We've now got a bit of clarity to contrast that. The brain loves polarity, right? And remember, our brain is going to see what's not working way easier and faster than what is working, which is why pausing at the beginning of a meeting to catch the good is so critical, because what's not working is always abundantly clear. But if we pause and think about what is working, it's there as well. So it's a choice you get to make. That's why you got to intentionally engineer the environment so that you run that ritual. So once you've got those team behaviors, right, let's make them visible and let's use them. Let's embed them into day-to-day rituals, week-to-week rituals, quarterly tune-ups, team meetings, performance reviews. Embed your code into pretty much every conversation and definitely every decision, particularly the tough ones, as you then build out your, what we like to call, a cooperative culture system. Yeah.
That word intentionality is and intentionally doing this, intentionality around it, because there are so many moving parts, both in life and in business. There's just so many moving parts. And if you don't craft and create that culture, it's going to create itself. And often it's going to be a mashup of all the things that make the team great and all the stuff that doesn't so much make it great. And there's going to be inconsistencies there. There's going to be things that are pulling in different directions versus all rowing towards in the same direction. So let's say you've got that in place. What I'm hearing there as well is the code. And we can talk a bit more about the code a little later. What I'm hearing is just the sheer importance of consistently implementing that into every single area rituals. And ensuring that, that's what you say is rituals, right? Tell me more about rituals.
Yeah. Well, we're in the building a cooperative culture space. I just love the word cooperation, because culture, I still see, Cam, is a bit, it's a bit ethereal. It's a bit woo-woo. And I think, much to Google's tremendous things they've brought to our life, they've also brought that a bit of the misconception that culture is about parties, perks, and ping pong, right? The slides and the free food and all that. They're fantastic. If you can do them, do them. They're components of it, but don't define your culture through your parties, perks, and ping pong. So I might meet with a new prospective team and client and say, how's your culture? And they go, oh, it's fantastic. We do this and we do that and da-da-da. How's your performance? Oh, it's crap. That's why you're here. Right. Well, then, okay, your culture's not driving your performance then, right? So you've got a gap there. But when you think about humans and culture, for thousands of years, we didn't have written word, right? And when you really go back, and don't want to get too anthropological here and biological, if you will, but culture's built through rituals and storytelling, right? There's I think it was yesterday with the team, we were talking about the sort of old adage at Thanksgiving, the mother cuts the end off the ham. A daughter and son goes, why'd you cut the end of the ham off? Oh, I don't know. Ask my mother. And then you ask the mother, you ask the grandmother, then you ask the next grandmother. And all it was that the great-great-great-great-grandmother had a pan that was too small, so she cut the end of the ham off to fit in.
That's so good.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got stories, you've got Thanksgiving as the ritual, you've got the story to go with it, and then 100 years later, we're still cutting the end off the ham, but we don't really know why, right? So that's the power of rituals and storytelling, because for so many years, it's all we had, right? Rituals, storytelling, and traditions. They're the three things that I care about, that if you think about them intentionally, you can embed them into what we like to call your preloaded calendar. So we like to help bring lessons from pro sport into the corporate world. You get the game schedule. I just printed out the Blue Jays, who's one of my wonderful teams I get the privilege to work with. And you get the game schedule. You know where every game is going to be, whether it's home or away at the start of the year. I'd like leaders to start thinking about their businesses more like a game schedule in pro sport in the context of their team meetings, their performance reviews, their team reviews, best vacation periods, non-vacation periods. I know that in my accountancy teams that I work with, you don't take off like January to April, that's playoffs. You play injured. Don't take a day off, right? Now, you recover in May because that's the tax season. So these sorts of things, and thinking about your organisation as one interconnected ecosystem, is really critical to manage the complexity of the external environment. And so rituals that are embedded with storytelling, right, and you code into those rituals and traditions, that's the simple mechanism that if you then run that system, rituals compound, right? The stories compound, and you know as well as I, especially being an Aussie, stories get better over time, don't they?
Yeah, of course they do.
Like how we started this new product or service in the organisation in 2014. By 2026, like it was gold plated, like stories get mayonnaise, right?
Yeah.
Let the mayonnaise jump on. But especially when the stories are connected to your purpose, your vision, your principles, and especially your team behaviours, then you're speaking through your code, and and you're rewarding those right behaviours. And just to close a loop on this, sometimes the best stories are the ones of failure that we learn the most from. So we did this, we got this result, and it bombed. It failed dismally. But the lessons we got from it, we did this behaviour right, but we probably let ourselves down here. Even those stories can compound in value, right? Because 2 months later, 2 years later, that lesson learned gets carried forward. And now the big win 3 years later, and there's a wonderful story in No Rules about this with Netflix. They have these wonderful presentations where people get up and go, right, here was a successful project. Here's why we won, da-da-da-da-da-da. Next person up. Here was a terrible project. We lost this much money. It bombed, boom, 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 boom. And a lesson learned from 3 years ago was brought to the present. And in this winning presentation, we go, thanks for the lessons 3 years ago, team. We used them and we brought them into today, and we were able to miss that gap, and we got the great win. culture's built through storytelling.
Yeah. It makes me think about going back thousands of years again, right? That the way that we survived as a species was through stories, yes. And like some of the most important stories was how to stay away from that thing that's going to kill you, right?
100%.
Like literally kill you.
Yeah.
Get out of there, right? You needed to be able to, and that's the beautiful thing about storytelling. When done well, you're able to instill a visual representation in somebody's brain, and they process it the same way as they would have processed the story. The same kind of neurochemicals flow through the system. And it needed to happen that way because, yeah, we needed to be able to experience the story to be able to then, when we're coming up against some animal, something that's potentially going to injure us or kill us, is like, we need to know what to do because it literally was a life or death situation. Now, in many cases, today's day and age, it's not so much a life and death situation, but it is still the same mechanism that goes on in our brains. Yeah. And when it comes to rituals, what are some things that people could be doing to ensure that the rituals don't become the cut off piece of ham inside the organization?
The short answer to that, to safeguard that, is that when you build your preloaded calendar, your business game schedule, right, you should embed reviews into it, right? Like you've got a hockey. I'm up here in Toronto, Canada, and we're hockey mad here. We love our 3 periods. I've never seen a sport before. Like I played Aussie rules football. It was 4 quarters. Right? But there was a huddle on the field in quarter 1. Then you'd go into the rooms, half time, huddle on the field, quarter 3, so on. Here we've got the 3 periods, and then there's an intermission. And in intermission, the players leave the ice, and you see them walking in their skates, which is kind of funny. And then they leave their skates and they leave their sticks out the front. So they can't play the game anymore, obviously. They go in for like a 20-minute intermission, where they would talk about what worked that period, what didn't work that period, and what are they going to do differently next period. Now, the scoreboard's right there. We're up 3-1. That's a much different intermission if we're down 3-1, right? But still, you'd still use the same fundamental questions. What's working? Yes. What's not? What are we going to do about it moving forward? 3 simple, repeatable, ritualized questions that we embed into your business schedule. So then we know, we might do a kickoff in January 10, and then we might get to April and we do an intermission. We like to a lot of our teams call them team tune-ups, whatever you want to call it. Some of them love intermission. I got a construction team that love hockey, and they actually use it. Period 1, period 2, period 3, and there's 3 intermissions. We get each team together. We get teams together to give each other feedback, reviewing what worked, what didn't, what are we going to do about it. And you can ritualize that framework and embed it into your preloaded calendar so we know on these dates in April, in these dates in September, and these dates, say, in December, we're going to sit down and review it. So to make sure your rituals aren't cutting off the bum of the ham, you would then use those reviews to go, right, is this right?
Yeah. Is it good to cut off? Is the piece of ham just not actually doing any service to the company, right? Yeah.
We're seeing too many organizations go through and they just do one annual performance review, right?
Oh, yeah.
They might even get a consultant to come in and do it anonymous, and then the consultant says to you, Cam, so we surveyed 5 random people and they reckon this about you. You don't even get, you don't get to, hey, tell me more about that. You don't get to retort. There's no context. How do we close the gap? Well, what suggestions do you have for me being better for you, right? You said I did this really well. Have you got any examples, right? These are, giving and receiving feedback is a skill that needs to be practiced. So it needs to be ritualized. Again, it goes into your calendar, and if it's in the calendar, good chance it's getting done. Now, if you miss it, there's a good chance you'll reschedule it. But if you don't get it in the calendar and be proactive, then you just sort of, things happen and you're like, how did this get so broken? Well, I've one quick thing. I'll go in to do this like kickoff day and do a discovery. It's like a diagnostic exercise. And I might say, like, this seems like a bit of a significant issue you guys have had for quite a while, team. How long has this been a problem? Oh, probably 6 years. And you're like, right. So what have we done about it? Well, we tried this, but we did it in isolation. Like the ops team tried to fix it, but really it's an ops, sales and marketing kind of problem. So ops had a crack at it, sales had a crack at it, marketing kind of did. And then we said, stuff it. Right. And then, so then we get that root of the weed, if you will. We spend a bit of time to find it. We pull it out. It leaves a big dent in the lawn, right? So it's a bit ugly for a while, but that gives us now a bit of space and time for the new grass to grow and mend and connect those teams together. 3 months later, they're a different team because they were letting that root of the weed, they were mowing over it essentially. And we know it looks good after you mow on it, right? I used to be a lawnmower back in Wonthaggi, and I loved it. I thought I was the world's best lawnmower, I used to think, just to pass the time. But I hated mowing over the weeds because 2 weeks later, they just came back up and those little yellow flowers would prong back up. So Dad gave me that pronger. It's like a thing that it gets down to the weeds and it digs them out. What I didn't like is it left the grass black. But that was the room and the space for it to mend together, and then people will figure it out. And then you come back 3 months later and you've pulled out a few weeds and you've given space for the grass to grow back, and the lawn and the team, metaphorically, are now working better together because they've actually sourced the weeds, but they've done that conversation together. There's way too much siloed operating going on in our larger organisations today, especially the ones that were built pre-internet. They're still struggling to make the transition from the old world to the new world.
This is where intentional execution and engineering really comes to fruition, because if you pull a weed out, this happens when from a behavioral standpoint as well. When, if you become aware as to why it is that you've been doing something and there's a limiting pattern of behavior, a limiting belief there, or if there's a certain addiction that somebody has, if you remove the addiction, the weed, if you remove that, it creates a void, right? And you're gonna fill it with something. And usually, 100%. If you haven't been intentional about how it is that you're going to execute differently going forward, then that is just going to be a new weed that kicks in. And it's exactly the same. Yeah, it's exactly the same within a team environment, is that if you do, you can pull the weed out and you can do all of the work that's required to do that. But if you're not then consistent going forward to ensure that a new behavior, a new way of doing things has replaced that, then there's a very good chance you're just going to go back to the way things were. And I love the 3 questions. I use something similar, like what I call the progress pulse, which these 4 questions. The three are exactly the same. What's working, what's not, what are you going to do differently? And then what support or what help do you need in order to make the progress and move forward? And the beautiful thing about those questions, you can use them everywhere. Brittany and I use them in our marriage. We have a weekly pulse and we just soften the questions a little bit so it doesn't feel like a performance review, right? I share this in keynotes. I say, hey, if you utilize these exact questions in your marriage, like I've just suggested you should do, it is a step-by-step process for divorce, right? Because it's not going to cut it. So you soften the questions, be like, all right, where did you feel loved and appreciated and taken care of? And then the second question being, where did you feel triggered? Where did it make your life more difficult? And then you're coming together as a team to solve it. The reason I love it inside organizations as well is that it enables you to, if you do it in a respectful manner when it comes to giving and talking about feedback, which I'd like to cover in a moment, then you're working together as a team to come up with the solutions as to what you're going to do differently, versus if you don't do those first couple of pieces, then it can sometimes feel like, especially in organizations, like you are in silos and one silo is on the other team and you're on this team and you're battling against each other rather than you're on the same team. You're aiming to build and win the championship together, right? And so I guess a question I've got then, let's talk about feedback. Why is feedback important? And I think we've covered it to an extent. And then let's talk about how you recommend people give feedback in a way that's both respectful and also gets to the root of challenge.
Yeah, great. As you were talking there, it just kept on, talking about organizations operating in their silos, right? Cliche, but it's killing us. It really is, right? It's why I've named my company Cooperation Works, because we need more cooperating, and it's mostly between lines of business departments, right? And so to answer the question around feedback, why is it important? We can't do it alone, right? We cannot see the back of our feet when we're trying to run fast forward, but our mates can, right? And I got a great story. I've had the privilege of training with Mark McCoy. I believe he was the first gold medalist in Canada in track. In 1992, he won the gold in the 110-metre hurdles. He was known as Mr. Bronze prior to that. He retired in 88, and Colin Powell said, hey, come over to England and come and train with the best coach in the world and have one last crack at it in 92, right? He's like, oh, all right. Gets over there, and as he tells the story with his gold medal around his neck, within a couple of weeks, this really well-known coach says to him, hey, Mark, and he was watching him from behind, right? Because this was sort of way a bit before videotape and the full analysis that we have today. Just watching him from behind. After a couple of weeks, he says, Mark, your right foot, and I'm just paraphrasing the story, your right foot spits out a bit, like to the right. We need to straighten that up. It's going to take us probably 2 or 3 years to get it because it's ingrained in you, but I reckon I can get you about 9 yards on your 110 over the next 3 years or so. As it turns out, the gold medal race, he goes and wins it by around nine sort of steps, right? And there's probably a bit of mayonnaise on that story. But the point of the matter is the coach could see the back of his feet, right? And when your foot is out like that and not like that, that's over 110 yards. That adds up. It compounds. That ritual now compounds and elevates your capacity as a runner, which is the purpose of our organisation, to elevate the capacity of people. That's why it's all about engineering environments to optimise human cooperation. If we elevate cooperation, we elevate capacity of our people. So when we get to feedback, this is the critical part. We can't see what we can't see. We've got decent peripheral, but if we're not feeling very safe, that peripheral goes like that. And if we're not communicating with the teams that we actually work with, and this is, I think, one of the gaps I see a lot and uncover. When you think about the silos, they'll go run team meetings in their departments and teams. But when you really break it down, most teams don't actually work much with each other. They do a lot of their work with other teams. Sales and marketing work together, right? Marketing and sales kind of work together a little bit down, but it's mostly across. Half my work is getting enterprise organizations to get those leaders and teams from each department and bring them together to practice feedback, right? To say, hey, sales to marketing, we love working with you for these reasons. Now, if they're not interacting with each other in a controlled environment where they're practicing and training feedback, we just call them code conversations, right? Because you got to have code conversations, and pause and catch what's working. Chances are when they do communicate, what are they communicating for? When something's not working. So now all your conversations are crap, right? Here's marketing on the phone. What do they want now? What have we done wrong now? Right? But when you bring the group in together, and we use an acronym called SORT. Let's sort it out, right? Strengths, opportunities for growth, recommendations, and takeaways, right? And it's the same again. It's just what's working, what's not, what are we going to do about it, and or suggestions we're going to do, and what are we going to do about it, right? So now, when you get in, and the first part of the exercise is, we love working with you, Cam, and your team at marketing for these reasons, the team goes, oh, you did see that, did you? Oh, yeah, we don't. Yeah, keep doing that. Oh, okay. It's an aha moment every single time. So then you've got a new connection point to now go, and we'd love for you to improve on opportunities for growth, these things. Our recommendation to grow is da-da-da-da. Let's debate that, and now let's make a decision and take that away. So the important order here to answer the original question is, it's got to start with catch the good. Tell your mates what they're doing well. Fill up the trust bank so that when it gets to the more critical opportunities for growth, then they're going to be more juiced up going, right, we're going to keep this 80% of what we're doing. We're just going to work on improving this 20%. Because truth be told, most people do most things right most of the time. And when things are broken, it's usually only a small section of the project or whatever's going on that's not working. So if you just get together and do a review and go, right, here's what we can improve, you're missing all the great stuff that is working. And when you do that, you're not catching what you should amplify. Sometimes when you catch the good at the start, you find a nugget and like, that's really working, isn't it? Should we just double down on that? And then magically, when you double down on it, the things that weren't working kind of magically disappear. Because if you keep passing to the 6'10" player because they're playing a 6'2" person on them, and the other team doesn't make a change, keep passing to the 6'10". If they score 100 points and we win, and they're the idiots for not. So I don't think in our organisations we're actually catching the good enough, the right behaviours and not just the right result, to actually double down and throw more energy into the stuff that actually gets us our results. We're spending a lot of time trying to fix the things that aren't working, but it's because we're avoiding what is. So when we practice feedback in a structured environment, facilitated, the receiver can only say thank you when they're receiving it. It's a very simple, practical process. It's practicing the skill of giving and receiving feedback with the people you work with, and you leave that room going, well, I'm way more connected. I know what to keep doing, and I've got some clear takeaways that we decided to do, and you said it earlier, together. If we don't do it together, then we work in isolation and we keep doing things that protect our lot of the land. And I believe that the opposite of teamwork is protection, right? You cannot be an optimized team if you're protecting or in a protection mindset. And so you got to practice giving and receiving feedback, schedule it, and start with, hey, we love you for this. These are your strengths. Keep doing this. And in that little exercise alone, sometimes you find nuggets that you need to amplify. And that's really, I love that part of the work.
What about when someone knows there's something coming? How do you go about receiving that feedback in a way where if you're getting triggered, for example, and you're in it and either you don't agree with it or it's because of somebody else, there's almost, there is an element of a victim mindset in there, a mentality of removal of responsibility. How can we build the strength of taking responsibility for the shortfalls that we might have and really seeing how we could grow versus seeing it as an attack?
Yeah. There's got to be an element of building. So you go into a new team and they're broken and their trust bank is a 2 out of 10, right? Probably not going to take them to training and practicing feedback, code conversations quickly. It might take a few sessions to build the trust bank back up. So there's exercises preceding that, right? If they don't have any feedback loop in their system, which many don't, right? They just have maybe annual individual performance reviews, which are done. Everyone hates them. There's no impact. There's no support, to your point. You had that question at the end. What's the support you need? That's critical. After you have a code conversation training session, there's support, right? If you're the individual and you're trying to amplify this behavior and try to eradicate this one, then what are the touch points with your leader? Your one-on-ones with your leader should be, hey, how you going with your keystone behavior you're trying to elevate and eradicate? Actually, pretty good. I've done this. I've I've got my calendar and every day I do it, I put a big X in it and I don't break the chain. Like there's got to be support off the back of the feedback, right? Now, if a person gets triggered, difficult. When you think about the crucial conversations training and some of the, when there's a heavy trigger, I'm pretty sure in crucial conversations, what you do is you step away, like you stop talking because you're just going to keep triggering, right? But if you do it in a safe environment, psychologically safe environment is critical. You do it in an inclusive way.
How do you create a psychologically safe environment?
The structure of the exercise is critical, right? Doing it with everyone. This is, I think, one of the paradoxes and the misnomers, right? Well, we've got some tough feedback. We shouldn't give it to them because it's going to make them angry or whatever it might be. And we should do it behind closed doors. But when you go through an exercise like a code conversation with the team and you're all in it together and you start with catching the good, the strengths of what's going on, it does change the dynamic and the biology, right? We've got to have our biology work for us because the default is against us, right? Safety precedes or overrides progress. We will choose safety over growth and progress, right? So the brain, we've got to make it keep safe so that it can focus on progress. So the framework of starting with strengths, what's working well, is absolutely critical. The receiver, whether it's a team or an individual, leader or person, can only say thank you as they're receiving the feedback, irrespective of what that feedback is. They're practicing just to say thank you, right? Then the givers, they complete their message, strengths, opportunities for growth, recommendations. Then the receiver can now ask questions and now we can get in sync. That process tends to avoid the trigger, right? It's just really holding the line for the receiver to listen, because that's the purpose of the code conversations, particularly the tough ones, for the receiver to genuinely hear it and be able to utilize that information to improve their performance. And then we as a team need to support that person or team. The triggering part is tough, because once we are triggered, it's difficult to find our way back. But I find with holding that line and running it, that process and doing it together, there's a unity to that. There's hey, we're in this together. And again, when we train using the code. Use the behaviors of the code. We love working with you because this behavior is helping us deliver on our purpose. Great work, right? So you got to use, the short answer again is the environment that you create. Think of feedback as a learned skill, therefore you can practice it. So you should practice it and actually run sessions on it and use the language of your code so that it becomes more about the team than it does about the individual.
Psychological safety is extraordinarily important, because if I feel, and if anybody feels like I'm being pushed into a corner here, you should get out of there, right? From a safety standpoint. And so that psychological safety, a couple of things that I found useful as well is within those moments is, and this actually came about, the realization, and I've utilized it within organizations as well, but it actually came about with Brittany and I in the early stages of when we were actually doing this together in our marriage, in our relationship at the time, our marriage, is we started with the good, right? Which was, hey, where'd you feel loved? Where'd you feel appreciated? And that's all good. And a little extra insight here, because you mentioned about sometimes you can catch the good and all of a sudden you can double down on that stuff, because if you ask a further question, and this one came about when Brittany shared early on that she really appreciates when there's a note that I send her or a message that I send her when I'm not there, when we're not together.
Right.
And you could easily go on from that and go, okay, yeah, cool. What else? Instead, I asked the question, I said, what is it about that makes you feel loved? And, she shared, well, that even though we're not together, that you're thinking of me.
Yeah, it's great. Beautiful.
That's gold. Because I'm learning in that moment,
Yeah.
I'm learning how to love the person. I'm learning how to love her. And in a business environment, you're learning how to bring out the best in someone, how like somebody processes their information, somebody who's performing at their best, implementing a certain behavior and going, that's why that means something to them. And so there's that
100%.
piece there. What we realized is that when it came to the, okay, this is where I got triggered, or this is what's not working, this is where you made my life more difficult. It was pretty easy to get triggered early on. And we realized that, we needed to have something there that transitioned over into the feedback, right? And the way we use it in a relationship sense is what I'm about to share is said with love and for the purpose of bringing us closer together. Thank you for hearing me without judgment. It means the world to me. And what that is it's showing the person that you're on the same team, that you want the same outcome, and sharing what I'm about to share is said for that purpose of getting that outcome. And so within a business context of being able to share what I'm about to share is for the purpose of making our team even more extraordinary than we are now, and to ensure that we're working together in such a beautiful, cohesive way. So thank you for hearing what I'm about to share. It really means a lot to me. Something like that. It really means 100%. A lot. Because then you're setting it up and you're showing that you are a team. You're on the same team. And especially if there's people that you don't necessarily feel that, or they don't necessarily feel that, you've got to be able to create those experiences where they feel like you're in the same room with them, right?
100%.
And so
let's double click on that. Let's double click on that. You just did a massive, awesome thing then. We had a moment there where you felt really cool as you were explaining that story, right? I had the same feeling here in Toronto. That feeling is what I call having our biology work for us and not against us, right? So you talked about when Britt said, I love your messages, and you said, well, tell me more about what about that do you love? Well, I love it when, even when we're not together, you're thinking about me and we still have that connection, right? That feeling, and if we roll the tape back, we both had goosebumps, right? I can tell you, I know I had some. That feeling can be created in a workshop, in a code conversation training session. And it most often is by going around the group and starting the feedback with, we love working with you for this. The other team, the individual, the leader, because that framework sorted out can be used from a team giving feedback to their leader, peers giving feedback to each other, marketing giving feedback to sales, and insert other names of departments, can be used to re-review our holidays, Andrea and I, Dre. Strengths, opportunities for growth, recommendations, takeaway. We went to Italy 2 summers ago. We're never, ever going outside. We're never going 6 hours laterally ever again. We were waking up at 3 a.m. The kids were like, we loved Italy and was with my family hometown. But now until they're age 10, it's all up and down. We're coming to see you in March. It's all Mexico. It's got to be in the same time frame and to warm weather. That's cool. But because we did the review, we realized that time zone doesn't work. But anyway, so that biology part, that human connection piece, that belonging cue and that connection can be and is created when you pause and practice what we call code conversations, right? And you gave us some really good context as well. In the training, the context for the code conversations is we're having this training session because we want to improve together and because we care about each other and the team. Great context. Right, let's go through it. Break into your groups, write down your feedback, debate your feedback, and then when you come back into the group, we'll have this group go first, this group will be the receiver, and this group and that group will go, and now it's orchestrated, it's done together, we're in it together, and, it does minimize the chances of people getting triggered because there's so much power in doing things together, right? And I think that's what's annoying me about our society. We've stopped operating like humans, right? We've stopped our in-person interactions. There's a lot of now, virtual. We're seeing a lot of companies now bring their workers back. It's annoying some people, but you cannot build that trust. And I like to use the word accelerate trust, because I think you can accelerate it with certain things that you do and certain rituals, but you cannot. Yeah, like this is great. You and I are good mates. We're going to, have some time together in a few months' time. And if we did this podcast together, we'd probably go for 10 hours and we wouldn't even know it was 10 hours, right? Because we're in the room together and all that.
Yeah.
But we, again, intentionally engineer the work environment to optimize cooperation, because we need more cooperating. And if we don't do it with intentionality, the environment's just too powerful. The external environment is asking too much of us, too much of our cognitive load, and we'll just get engineered by the demands of the external environment.
One thing I'm finding really interesting is that a lot of people are sharing or maybe even asking questions, not for the purpose of understanding,
right,
but for the purpose of being able to prove that I'm right.
Yeah.
And that's not cooperation.
No.
That's division.
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite of it. And there's a genuine desire and a seeking to understand that it can occur with this when there is, tell me more about that. Tell me why it is how it is that you came to that. And there is, and you can even hear it in, I talk about it being like curious language and curious tonality, right? Curious language on its own, you can say, well, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
Versus,
Exactly.
tell me more about that. Like
Yeah.
exactly the same words, but it's a complete different tonality. And that curious tonality, like it is a genuine desire and a curiosity to understand, because you might not know everything. You might not understand all that's going on in a certain situation. There are certain assumptions until we have the factual information out on the table. There are assumptions that are running rife. And some of those assumptions are going to be doing you a good service, and some of them are going to be doing you a complete disservice. And so going into these conversations with a seeking and a curiosity and a desire to genuinely understand, because if you truly do want the outcome, then there isn't the need to push somebody else down.
Nah.
It's for the purpose of being able to see how can you bring them up. And that then comes into the feedback as well, is why are you giving the feedback?
Yeah.
Are you giving the feedback to make yourself feel superior, to make yourself feel better about yourself? Because now it's their fault and it's nothing to do with you. Oh, now I don't have to take any responsibility. Or are you genuinely doing it because you can see something better in them, and you can see something better in their ability to be able to create something better for the team? And this is where pointing fingers versus, again, coming to it as in a team environment. I remember with some therapy that I had a little while ago in there, and it was actually before I met Brittany, and this is like stuff around the relationship side of things, because there was an issue that I had, which was that I was blaming when I was specifically getting triggered in this area, where I would be, you did this, versus when this happened, I felt this way. And that has shifted so much in my relationship, but also externally into other areas as well. If I can share, hey, when you'd mentioned last week about X, I felt in that moment, I don't know, I felt a little disrespected. And here's why. And I was wondering if we could maybe have a conversation about how to do this in a different way going forward, in a way where, it didn't feel that way, right? And so that I feel versus you did that was a game changer for me from a feedback standpoint, that's for sure.
So a couple of things are coming up for me. I love you sharing that, man. Awesome. I think that the essential part that you were talking about there right at the end was the pause, like making the time to have the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so hung up on this intentional engineering around your business schedule, your game schedule that is your business meetings, reviews, training. So fundamental difference between pro sport and business. pro sport, the train to play ratio. Train 90% of the time to play 10%, right? NFL playoffs are right now, we're seeing just some just extraordinary stuff going down, right? These athletes are just incredible, right? But the hours of running that play, like NFL intrigues me as an Aussie because we have sports where you got to do all the skills. This is a sport where some players don't even touch the ball for their career. It blows my mind. Anywho, there's all this training, there's all this game tape, there's all this time training, practicing, rehearsing for quite a small percentage of time actually playing. In business, it's the other way around. We 99% play and 1% train. I'm trying to bring to the world, let's flip it to maybe 10 to 15% train and practice and 80. And our contention is we should be training and practicing with each other, because if we get it right inside, it becomes our customer and client experience outside. And we know one thing from sport, control the controllables. You only control what's going on internally. And COVID taught that us, the outside, right? So this is why we need to stop and pause and conduct quarterly or triannual team tune-ups to be able to pause and capture that time, because in the heat of the battle in work, you might not have followed up on that when that team member said something not nice to you in a meeting and it kind of irked you. But then you get to a team tune-up and you've got the time and space to say, hey, I love working with you, Jim, I'd like you, the opportunity for growth for you is, I think your tone in meetings can soften a little bit. Last 2 weeks ago in that meeting, it kind of put me off track for a fair bit. And it gives you the time and space to have that conversation and not let that little thing become a big thing. But in the speed of today's world, when do you ever really follow up and get to that conversation unless it's kind of scheduled? Now, the goal of the training is to be able to have that conversation and self-manage and self-police in between the sessions. That's why it's training, right? And so the training allows you to get better at the giving and receiving of feedback while you play the game of business. But if we don't train and practice it, we don't get better at it.
Yeah.
Right?
How then, in the moments where, okay, if the things have been scheduled, the meetings, the tune-ups, everything has been scheduled there. Let's say the organization is doing it incredibly well, or you're doing it in your life incredibly well. Then you get the feedback as to what could be done differently. You agree on that feedback. You go, you know what? I could do better. And here's what I'm going to do differently. How do we then hold ourselves or other people to account, so the high levels of accountability to ensure the growth actually occurs versus it being something you look back on at the next tune-up and go, same thing?
Yeah. The short answer is that we look to store that information in a central location so that we can follow up on it, right? In our training, we have what we call integration sessions with the team. We just call them TINTs, Team Integration Training Sessions. So after their workshops and they've gone, okay, I'm going to really work on this behavior. Then when we do meet with them, we give them the first 10 to 15 minutes to break into small groups and they share. How's their behavior going? I knocked it out of the park last week. I really, I've been working on rehearsing and practicing, presenting ideas, blah, 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 blah. But then this week I didn't rehearse and look, it went all right. I think I'm actually probably going to get the sale, but I know I could have done a lot better. And again, I'm following on from the other conversation before. One of the best ways for us to avoid the you are versus I feel thing you were talking about is you can get individuals, the teams, the leader to do a self-assessment while you're doing the code conversations as well. So here's a sheet looking at the other team, and here's a sheet looking at us. Fill out what we think they're going to say about us. What do we think they're going to say our strengths are? What do we think they're going to say our opportunities for growth are? What do we think they're going to recommend we do? Now, let's fill out the sheet for them. Right. Team, give feedback to us. Cool. Right. Say thank you. Cool. No back and forth. All right. Team 2, read out what you thought they would say about you. Wow. Yeah. So, number one, you folks said this is a strength. We saw that. We saw that. We saw that. We did not think we had your third strength you gave to us. We had that as a weakness. We thought that was an opportunity for growth, and we thought we've been doing that poorly. Oh, no, no, no. You guys are smashing that out of the park. Keep doing whatever you're doing there. It's helping us enormously. Oh, really? That's pretty cool.
Well, what I like about that is it allows for a conversation for, on one side they say, no, that's going outstanding. And then on this side, who might have thought it was a weakness because maybe there was a lack of communication, or maybe they can see something they could be doing better. And say, well, what if we did this?
Yeah.
Would that make it even better?
That's correct.
Could we get an even greater result? And then all of a sudden, the conversations, again, it's that cooperation piece that you're talking about, which is fantastic.
The gold is the conversation after the conversation.
Yeah.
So we've both given our feedback. We've both done our self-reflections and assessments. And now, right, so you're seeing the same thing we're seeing. Yes. I didn't think that coming into today's session. Biology for us. Vulnerability and empathy are neuromagnets. They draw us together. It's difficult to be vulnerable and empathetic if we don't understand each other. So, in many ways, all these sort of rituals, this is a bit of an aha moment for me right now, actually. Underneath all of these exercises, tools, rituals, and frameworks that we're talking about, is it's an act of understanding. We're consistently understanding each other. When we understand each other, we evoke empathy. We're more likely to be vulnerable in those moments, which is really saying, this is really hurting us. When you press that red button in your department, that causes us about 3 extra hours per week but if you press the red and the green together, it's going to decrease that work. And we know you have to do it because it's our job to fix that part. But if you do them two together, it's about an hour's work. Really? We've been pressing the red button a fair bit lately. Yeah, we know. Oh, I didn't really want to give you extra 3 hours of work. Well, thanks for saying that, because we over here have been thinking that you've been pressing that just to piss us off. And that
this is
mental.
So important, because this is assumptions, right? Is on one end, it's like, oh, we're pressing the red button. I think this must be, they haven't come back. Yeah. It seems like this is a really effective way of doing this. And so that's the assumption there. On the other side, like you said, the assumption is, I think they're doing this to piss us off. And then you're able to come together and actually remove any of the assumptions that might be kicking in.
It's that, remember, there was a famous study, which they can't do anymore. I was just watched, for whatever reason, Ghostbusters came on the telly the other day, and it reminded me of it, where Bill Murray's character, at the very start of Ghostbusters, he's got the good-looking lady and the guy, and they're doing the test, and he's just like, and you can electrocute, if you can guess what the symbol on the thing is, you don't get electrocuted.
Right.
But anyway, there's a study in the 60s, the 50s maybe, that can't be done anymore, obviously. But when people couldn't see the other people on the other side and they could electrocute them, they damn near killed them, right? Now, all that little story we talked about before is just getting people in the room together, face-to-face or virtually, doesn't actually matter. I've been very much wrong about the power of giving and receiving feedback in these code conversation exercises virtually. They work. I didn't think they would, but they work really well. But the point of the matter is, when we pause to conduct an exercise that is essentially deep-rooted in empathy, me understanding your perspective and you understanding my perspective, and then having time to deepen that understanding, that's the critical part. That's why I hate these anonymous 360s. Where is the time for you to say to me, it's clear that Emile gave me that feedback, but how do I change? And secondly, I don't know how I can help you. It's the conversation after you give me feedback and I give you feedback. It's the getting in sync part that's the gold. The feedback is given that opens the code conversation egg, as I like to call it. But then what we do with that egg, whether it's an omelette or scrambled or whatever, is the conversation after, where we're going, right, well, hey, what if we pressed red and yellow, but then 30 seconds later we press green? What would that do, team? That would probably, if you press the green, that might take another half an hour off that task. So now we've gone from pressing this that's affecting them for 3 hours per time to getting in sync and going, when we do this now, boom, and then that, it's all the way down to 30 minutes. Compound, say they're pressing the red button 3 times a week, whatever, and that compounds over time. That's a huge amount of lost time. And this is my whole point about the complexity of today's business. We don't even know that when we're pressing red, it's affecting everyone else. That's the nature of today's complexity. Everything's interconnected. So if we don't stop and pause to go through structured exercises like this to unveil what's really happening and understand each other, we'll just keep pressing the red button.
Well, here's what's really interesting is that study that can't be done anymore, the one that you mentioned from the 60s, which if you're not seeing the person, then they would inflict the electric shock.
Yeah, pain. That's right.
It's actually happening in a different way now. So years ago, there was a song that I released about bullying and suicide that went on to reach a lot of people around the world. And
That's right.
many comments underneath, like thousands of comments underneath. Every now and then, a troll would kick in and would come in and say some horrific stuff for the purpose of whatever it is that they're trying to do, right? And I had to look into this as to why is it that someone would be willing to say something like that when, if they were face to face, would never even think about it? Why is it that so many people are willing to share and say things online when in a real conversation, they would not even think about saying that? And the reality is, a huge component is because we don't see the person's emotional response.
Yeah, 100%.
We don't see their reaction, which then makes us feel a certain way.
Can't understand.
Yeah. And we don't understand, which is what we're talking about here, about understanding and seeking to understand. And so if we're not understanding how it's impacting somebody else, then we can end up inflicting the metaphorical massive electric shock. Yeah. And so if we can truly go into this with that seeking to understand, like you said, whether it is a virtual conversation or it's an in-person conversation, being able to see the person though, and being able to see how is it that this is actually impacting you, to be able to then do something about that and come together, I think is really important. And so, yeah, I just found that fascinating when I learned about that it's a huge part of it is not witnessing the other person's response, which just goes to show how much we are a connected species. Is probably the best way of explaining that.
With the white in the eyes, right? I can tell you there's danger over there, and I didn't change any part of my body, right? Research shows so much of our communication, particularly in complex, when there's complexity, texting you, hey, are we starting at 2:30 or 2:45? There's no complexity. A written word easily gets us in sync. But as soon as there's complexity in a conversation, now that could be me and you not seeing eye to eye, or there's 3 or more people in the conversation, complexity goes right up. So tone and body language is a huge communication pathway. In some studies, 55% of communication is through body language, 38% through tone, and 7% through written word. And I ask my teams, what's the main way you're communicating today in your environment? Email? And I'm like, well, I'm no mathematician, but it's about 93% of your information could be miscued. And let's think about it, know about it. You can misconstrue written word any which way you want, right? But to your point before, tell me more about that. That's cracking versus, tell me more about that, right? there's so, communication is one thing, but tone and context is everything, right?
That's huge, isn't it?
And we're making, and that's why I don't like our society ripping in, jokes from 2008 for these comedians or whatever it is. We're taking the past. It's a different context.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm so big on helping teams schedule these reviews, tune-ups, intermissions, whatever they call them, because time creates new context. Your tune-up I'm doing a tune-up in February with a great insurance company, love them, and then another one in June. They'll have 7 new players on their team in the February one and probably another 7 by June. You've got a different culture in your organisation when you have one new team member, right? And, of course, those reviews, just to kind of tie a bow a little bit in the system and these games, it also helps you go, right, that hire, should they stay on our bus? Should they get past their onboarding phase? But when you do team reviews and the team goes, hey, Cam's joined, he's a jet. Mate, what can we do to get him more in the business? Because he knows way more than we thought. And they'll say, hey, we got new Cam. What do we reckon? Ooh, doesn't really live the code. Like he's getting pretty good results. He's pretty smart, but he's not. Look at the behaviours. Rate him against the behaviours. Nah, he does that behaviour pretty well. Yep. Nah. He's not living our code.
Yeah.
So you don't then have to deal with the aftermath of trying to sack them, because in Canada it's a bit more difficult, America a bit easier, but you want to use that code and ritualize it to make decisions, particularly about your people, right? And that's why I'm so big on the code piece. And I know I've sort of brought it back around again, but I think it's pretty central to what we're talking about, because in all of these things that we're talking about, my argument is that you have to have a code to help it really, really work, because it's the thing that binds us together, right? It's the thing that binds us together. It makes the feedback real, because we said this is who we are and what we stand for. So then, you were asking me a question before, what do you do about those people that don't change behavior? Well, then they'll come to the next code conversation and they'll get the similar feedback. And then they come to the next one and they're like, so now you've got some evidence to go, hey, maybe Cam, this is not the right environment for you. How can we support you to move on? And in my experience, 9 times out of 10, you stand up and go, hey, Emile, I don't think I should be here. This is not working for me. Fantastic. How do we help you move on to a tribe that probably works for you? Because your code, when you keep using it as a ritual to have conversations and using it as an assessment tool, people don't want to rock up to that next team review and team tune-up and be doing the same thing they were, hurting the team. People don't want to get that same feedback. So now people start to self-select. They act their way into your system. They act their way out. And also, the reality is people's lives change. We had a client recently where, the bloke actually unexpectedly having a 4th kid, right? Really unexpectedly. In fact, twins, sorry. Yeah, 2, and they were done and then got twins and he's like this. So he sort of came up and said, look, guys, I just don't think I can play at the level you need me to. And I was like, and we were all a bit sort of peeved, because he's a great player, but that's a great sign of your culture. The team member goes, look, I don't. So now we're trying to figure out how to support him and but that's cool, isn't it? Right? Because then people start to call out where they need help, where they want to step up. We can identify who's an emerging leader. And also, you kind of don't want to also promote great players into leadership. You want to kind of keep them as great players. So there's all these great things that come when you stop and pause and practice code conversations in a structured environment, because it just puts more dollars in the trust bank and it keeps building a more cooperative culture, and it compounds over time.
Assumption we spoke about a little bit already. And as we're just continuing to have this conversation, just how critical it is to remove any of those assumptions. The work that you're talking about here is to do exactly that, is to remove any assumptions that might be there that hold us back from getting where we want to go. And you mentioned earlier about like the way in which a text, for example, or an email can be misconstrued in terms of there only being written word there. And that's why it's important to have these conversations. I thought about it before as you were sharing that. There's a great sketch by Key and Peele.
Key and Peele. I use it. I love it.
It's so good. For those listening, is they're texting each other, and it's basically just like two friends like talking about are they going to catch up. And just one's like kind of flipping about it, going, "Oh yeah, whatever," and yeah, maybe we could this, and then the other's going, "Whatever," and it's it gets so worked up to a point where he's about to go and bash this guy, and it's just this. It's a great example of assumptions kicking in.
Yeah. I show it at the first lunch.
Yeah.
Once I've won the team's trust, because it's a bit, once I've won the team's trust, it goes up at lunchtime for a bit of a giggle just to drive home. Guys, folks, can we just pick up the phone a bit more? A lot of our world's problems, when you're about to write that third email where you don't understand and you're not in sync, don't write the next one. Pick up the phone, because the next one turns into 18 and 5 people CC'd. 4 days later, 11 are CC'd, comes back to the original person. The task is not even done. You've interrupted 11 people. They've tried to track it. And it's just this cycle of the new epidemic I see in the business world is the pandemic of miscommunication via email. If we just picked up the phone and said, "Hey, just in relation to that email, okay. I see. You've got not do. That's a typo. Yeah, shit, sorry, mate. Yeah, that's a typo. Good catch." Because think about it. An N''T in a big email or an email that you just grab on the fly in an Uber, right? You jump in, you quickly check in, you're expecting don't. They give you a do. Your cognitive bias goes don't. Stuff, Cam. Shit. I knew he'd say that. How easy is that to do? And that's happening over and over again in our organisations because we're trying to have complex conversations via email, which, again, this is not easy stuff. Like if I had the complete code and key to this solution, I'd have it. But for me, the only simple solution is pick up the phone more.
How do you see this playing out then in the years to come as things get even increasingly more digital with artificial intelligence and other technologies that are probably not yet to even come to surface yet?
It's crazy. Two things come up for me. They just sacked the Baltimore Ravens coach and 18 years with John Harbaugh, who's highly respected, and I thought the owner spoke really honestly and openly. But I also got told by my mates that he was sacked via a text message. So that's the wrong behaviour. And the thing is, behaviour is catchy. We're social beings, right? We just mimic each other. And the good news about that is good behaviour is catchy, but bad behaviour is probably even more catchy, right? So that's one thing. But I was with the dean of IMD, a big Swiss executive coaching MBA university out of Switzerland, at a dinner the other night. I'm doing a talk for them in a few weeks. And he's been 25 years in the AI world, so one of the preeminent experts. And he's talking about the things that he's seeing and the concerns and the mass job loss and all this sort of stuff. So I sort of tried to flip it and said, well, look, you got a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old. I've got a 7 and a 3-year-old. What industries are you seeing that are growing because of jobs that are growing because of AI? Because when we had the internet, we saw more graphic designers and all these jobs got created. It was fantastic. And his sad answer was, I haven't really got a very good answer for you there. And I was like, well, I was hoping for a bit more meat on that to think positively about the future. So yeah, when we think about what's coming and AI, I'm seeing a lot of younger people respond using AI and not really knowing what they're saying and responding. So they're just defaulting and using AI to do their thinking.
There was a study did you see the study that came out of this from MIT?
Scared the bejesus out of me, 100%.
Yeah, for those listening, there was a study out of MIT last year, I believe, about mid 2025 at the time of this recording, where I think it was students doing an essay utilizing just their thinking, utilizing search, or the third group utilizing ChatGPT. And overwhelmingly, those who were able to remember were, the first group, but even for the second group to third group, as in search versus utilization of AI, the decrease in the ability to recall, to remember, is just vastly different. And I've noticed this for myself. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we utilize AI for within the business. Is that it's more difficult if I'm working on some stuff for a talk, for example. If I'm getting some research or some other pieces from other sources, and I haven't done that thinking for myself, it's more difficult to recall. It actually does that. And I think there's going to be benefits of that, because if you think about it, how many phone numbers do you know?
I was just saying this the other day.
Not
I used to be the king of it. I used to pride myself. 722-994,
Yeah. There's still a couple I know from like childhood, but most of the numbers we don't know. And is that a good or a bad thing? I mean, in an emergency, you need it. And so it's probably good to have those, at least a couple of those sorted. But it has potentially freed up space. And so I think this is, again, where intentionality comes into it, of ensuring that we are being intentional about what we're okay with tools like that. Yeah, freeing us up, because it does the thinking for us, which then enables us to focus on the things that are more higher valued tasks.
Yeah. Yes, 100%. In the context of our conversation with what we're trying to achieve with our teams, the threat is it's diminishing our understanding and alignment, because we're referring to AI to write the email, and then we're just potentially sending it. That's good. That's a reply. So now then we come back 3 weeks later and that piece of the project has not worked. Hey, Emile, you sent that email a few weeks ago, but that's not what you've ended up doing. Well, what email are you talking about? That one there. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't even remember sending that email. What did I say? Oh, I did say that, didn't I? So now, if that wasn't the context that I was trying to share, and they've gone and done 3 weeks of work, 5 members on their team working on it, 2 on mine, add up the math, add up the hours, and now it's completely wrong because I didn't actually check. Is that what I was really trying to say? And like I say, an N' in one wrong word, or the cognitive bias of reading and so this is what I mean by this complexity. This is expanding work at rates that our brain can't. So our cognitive load then. So then the threat of, okay, I've released the cognitive load of writing email onto AI. Now I can move over to things that are more creative. But for many of our younger team members, that is beautiful. More time on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. What you were sharing just then, that is the example that we were talking about earlier of pulling out a weed in this case, but then not having anything to fill it with, and then it gets filled with something like Instagram or something that is a low value use of time. That's where it's incredibly important that you're filling that intentionally. But I think what you're touching on here is really important, because it is, yes, you might be freeing up certain pieces from an email standpoint, being able to write faster, do this differently. You are still communicating though. And it is your responsibility to ensure that you are communicating in a way that's aligned to who you are, in a way that's aligned to how it is that you are aiming to communicate. And I was having a dinner with someone a few weeks ago, And we had a conversation just about different things from an AI standpoint, and the importance of verification, the importance of verifying, the importance of actually taking the time to look through. And a great example, personal example of this with the podcast is, we utilize it for a multitude of different things. One of those is for it to go through the entire transcript. When we go through this, the entire transcript of our interview here, that'll go through, and we have different custom GPTs set up that do certain different tasks. One of those is to go through the transcript and find the key pieces that could be good for the opening hook, right? To get people drawn in to actually say, oh, this looks like it's a really good conversation, rather than just saying, oh, Emile's just really good looking, right? And so with that, one of the things that we've noticed is even with very specific guidance, I get sent across from the team. These are the potential opening hooks. Which do you want to go with? And on multiple occasions so far, I know it's going to get better, but on multiple occasions so far, I've gone through going, yep, that was a great, I remember that conversation. I remember Emile saying this, that's killer. And then all of a sudden, I don't think I asked that question.
Mental.
It's happened a number of times now where it's made shit up. It's made something up, and it's taken something from somewhere else, which is fascinating when there is the explicit utilization of not doing that. And so that's where verification is so incredibly important, and will continue to be important because, otherwise there's going to be, again, all kinds of challenges coming up. So it's a fascinating time to be alive, that's for sure.
There's a quote, and I'm writing my book at the moment. I'm loving it, and I just got to paraphrase it again. But there's what the biggest problem with communication is the illusion that it happened, right? There's because you said before, we are communicating. The email has been sent, so there is communication out there.
Yeah.
But there's the illusion that it's happened by way of, hey, I understand what you were saying, right? And that illusion or that it's just, again, making leaders' life that much more complex and difficult, which again keeps going for me back to what's your code, what's your vision, your purpose, your principles, behaviors, and the repetitious use of it in everything that you do in your organization. Because, what was it? The old stats were around, you hear something 7 times before you really understand it. That's now got to be in the hundreds, right? Because as I was saying to a team yesterday, the of the universe, the noise of the universe, pre-internet, now, because there's so much information out there and so many crazy distractions, the is just so big and loud that, again, if you're not intentional with your time, if you don't have app blockers on your phone, I mean, I've been off social media now for years. My wife keeps Facebook so my family, the studies back home, can see stuff. But I've got an Instagram account, and sometimes she'll flick me a little funny. There's a great Australian ad about lamb. I'll flick it to you. But so I love that. But then I can see with Instagram, you go one down and you're like, wow, this is, and I'm like, gee, it's pretty full on. And I have a very severe reaction to that and the speed of the information now, because I've really gone off it. And I just sort of even think back, I'm 48 in March and old enough to know pre-internet that, I'll meet you down the pub, Cam, after work at 7. So I knock off at 4:30 or 5 and I drive home and listen to the afternoon radio, but I don't have any other calls. I can't email anyone while I'm driving or take another phone call. And I get a bit of mental rest after work. I might go home, see mum and dad. We have a couple of conversations, might have a kick at the footy, and then I'll go down and meet you at the pub at 7. And if I'm going to be late, there's no way of me telling you, right? But there's cognitive load that's, I finish a day's work and have a little bit of mental rest, and we have a few beers or whatever it might be. I know we both don't drink, but we catch up at 7 o'clock, and me and you have a conversation from 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock. A few people might pop into our table and say good day, but really it's me and you, just you and I. Now, let's transfer that into today's world. Knock off at 4:30. Oh, great. I'm going to get 4 or 5 phone calls in now in between me driving home. Go home. I'll try and bang out a few extra emails. Might check social media. I've got a bit extra work to do. I'll tell Cam I'm going to be half an hour late, and I'll blame it on, but I'm actually in the parking lot doing emails. I come to you. We're at 7:30. I'm on 4 or 5 other conversations while we're trying to have dinner together. Jump back in the car, try to sneak in some extra work before I get home. Where's the cognitive load going down? Get up the next day, I'm at 35% cognitive load already.
Yeah, this is a really important piece of the conversation because I experienced this personally last year. I burnt out big time. There was so much that I had on in itself from the talks that I was giving, the coaching that I was doing, delivering to clients, and a marriage and building our life together, getting married earlier in the year, and then my sleep was really suffering. My sleep, I had much lower sleep than what I have this year so far of really putting in against some really healthy routines and rituals in there, and that cognitive load, if that continues to be that way over and over again, I mean, burnout is massively increasing. And I think when I give talks with The Edge of Possible is made up of these 3 key steps of get clear, go bold, and be relentless, which is being clear on who you are, where you're going, why you're going there. The going bold is being able to challenge assumptions, being able to really take the leap and have courage around it, and being able to reframe fear. And that third piece is, yes, be relentless in your pursuit of excellence, continue getting 1% better every single day, but also be relentless in removing the noise and be relentless in your recovery, because those 2 pieces are incredibly important about what is it you're getting rid of, what are you removing, because companies are constantly buying for your attention. This is the economy and the life that we're in right now, is that means money. That means profit. That means we get your attention, we get you to spend more time on there. And we do need to be very, very intentional about how we're dedicating, because these tools are and can be and are incredible. We wouldn't be having this conversation if it wasn't for
100%.
Technology.
Yep. 100%.
And it is the intentional utilization of that to ensure that we're utilizing it for our benefit versus it utilizing us for its benefit, right? Or for somebody else's benefit. And so that is a critical piece. If we are going to thrive in the years to come as a human race, is the ability to be able to continue replenishing our energy, because we're not machines. That's the difference between us and AI, at least not right now. Maybe at some stage, we connect, and everything goes in. And maybe it's a different story. But at least as it stands right now, mental health challenges are increasing. Burnout is increasing. Suicide is increasing. These are occurring. Addiction is increasing. The need for increased amount of dopamine is increasing because our tolerance is increasing and getting bigger and bigger as to what we can tolerate. And so that recharge and that replenishing is vital. And it's where, space and time and silence tends to speak to us, but only if we're quiet enough to hear it.
That's right.
And some of the best ideas will come when we're on the toilet or in the bathroom or out in nature or somewhere like that, where we're just in silence. Some of the best ideas come in that time.
100%. 100%. So much of my reading and research is just, the greats walked, Steve Jobs did walking meetings. I got my Peloton bike there. I haven't joined Peloton. I just have a Peloton bike, so it's a great bike. I do half my meetings, my morning huddles on the bike. I just reviewed a bunch of workshop decks for our academy. I'm on with my designer. I'm riding. I did like a 16 bike ride today in a workshop meeting, right? So that I'm really intentional with, and because I know my brain works better in flow. So when I'm moving, I'm way better. And if it's a meeting where I'm getting asked questions or just giving opinions on things, I don't need to be sitting here doing nothing, right? One of my big things my ahas over the last couple of years has been high performance is an act of reduction. Mm-hmm. It's a consistent act of taking things away to the point where perfection is achieved not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. I put that up when I was doing my TED Talk, And my good mate, Cody Royal, who's written 3 books, told me about his editing experience, about how you go through every line three to 7 times. And can you take a word out? What's in there that's not adding any value, right? And your point before is really interesting. We've got to keep our cognitive load and that real power part of our brain for the complexity of the job that we've got. If we're using it and we're giving it up for scrolling, we're giving it up on shit that doesn't matter, or what's really cognitive depleting is human dynamic problems. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not getting along well with this teammate. When you get rid of that emotional baggage and you can put more effort into the things that matter, to your point, what if you pull out the weed, are you throwing grass on it, seed, and are you watering it, or are you just letting Instagram scrolling fill it up? So this is the part that I'm really kind of double downing on this year, is helping my clients strip things away. Alex Ramosi speaks really well. I think Stephen Bartlett asked him at one of his podcasts, what's the one mistake that most entrepreneurs make that people don't speak enough about? And he said they try to do things concurrently. In his world, he says, I just go, I'm working on this project. All resources go on that project till it's done. Then we're working on this project. All resources. Now that's not an easy thing to do, right? Because it actually means you've got to say no to a disproportionate amount of opportunity. And my second quote, I pulled it down now, was the Steve Jobs quote. You know, people think focus means saying yes to the thing that you've got to do or you're working on, but that's not what it means at all. It means saying no to the 100 other good ideas that there are. You have to pick carefully. Critical, way more critical than ever before. And that's why I'm so big on the code of the team, because that's also your reference point. That's your reference point for your behavior of your people. Then you've got to make the decision, to your point, getting clear on what matters and where you want to go with your business. Because if you don't get your people dynamics right, the cognitive load to manage that is just way too much to actually work on providing products and services that have a huge impact on your clients, which is the buzz of work, isn't it? Like, the buzz of our work is when you come back to a team, you've done some training, and 3 months later you come back and do a review and you go, oh, you folks, if this feels different, what's going on? Well, we solved that problem and we're not fighting with them anymore, and this team member left and we didn't have to sack them. And you're like, this is working. And you're like, yeah. And you're like spine tingles, right?
Yeah.
So this intentionality with our time, because if we float through life right now, it will get eaten up at rates that we just cannot fathom and we can't understand, and we're seeing it. And I'm worried about it because I've got 3 and a 7-year-old, and it's just interesting, isn't it? So interesting.
I remember hearing years ago that if you don't fill your calendar, somebody else will, for one.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing is, as you were sharing, I go, momentum feels really good. It feels good. Like, when you're making progress, it feels really freaking good. And the exact opposite is the case when you're not feeling that. You know, when it's not occurring, is that it feels heavy. It feels difficult. It feels challenging. And to your point about when dynamics between people, when that's impacting in a negative way, it is heavy. It can get heavy. And because it's not just in the moment when that situation is occurring, it's the afterthought, and it's the, oh, I need to have this conversation with the person. We ruminate over how it's going to be, what's going to happen. And then you have the conversation, and afterwards you go, that wasn't actually that big a deal. But the mental capacity that's required to be able to hold that is huge. And the more we're able to have these conversations, the better. So to really drive this home, lay out the steps. So you've mentioned about code conversations, you mentioned about code, you mentioned about these different pieces. Lay out the exact steps that a company or a leader within a company can be taking. What are they?
The three parts of the cooperation works formula: code, relationships, process, right? So code, we've talked a bit about that, getting really clear on your vision, purpose, principles, and behaviors. If you're a smaller company, it'll be, for us, vision, purpose, behaviors. If you're bigger, it's probably just your purpose, principles, and behaviors, because the vision is a bit out of your hands potentially. The relationships triangle for us is profiling, understanding yourself through your psychometric profile, and understand others so you can adapt and connect and leverage skill sets. That's a really important part of the training in itself. Huge benefits to using profiling. We use Insights Discovery. There's DISC and all that sort of stuff, but we love Insights because the reporting's just so good. And they're colour energies. They're easy to apply and remember, which is so critical. Storytelling. Putting rituals into your organisation where you tell stories using your code as the reference point. Absolutely critical. Culture's built through storytelling. And then the code conversations is the third part of the triangle of the second part of the formula. Then the process part is simplify and ritualize process. So we would go in and look at, are your meetings optimized? Are there too many that are useless? Are they inclusive enough? Are all voices heard? Inclusion is the foundation for psychological safety. Psychological safety has been proven to be a high predictor of performance. A big Google study, 180 teams, Project Aristotle, look it up. We need psych safety in our modern day world because we need people to share and be okay with sharing their vulnerabilities and taking interpersonal risk. So meetings are critical in the way they're structured. If you're a leader and you're coming in and you're just speaking and telling everyone what to do, and you're not allowing everyone's voice to be heard, then you are breaching psychological safety and inhibiting that trust to be built. Scoreboard and scorecards. Is the goal of the organisation clear and visible on a consistent basis? And the scorecard is the same thing, but for the individual. This sport, think of it, you got the Jumbotron, you always know what the scoreboard is, right? Imagine playing sport with no scoreboard. You play a bit of pickleball, even in the most friendliest of games, you probably keep score, right? Gets a bit boring after a while if you're not keeping score. Like, what are we doing this for, right? Well, we're training. Well, then let's just train. Right? So that's a huge Achilles heel of so many companies. The scoreboard is not visible. Or A, we don't know what it is, and it's not visible enough to be able to make smart decisions, particularly at field level, especially big layered conversations. The executive team's looking at the share price, the field's got nothing to do with it, and we don't understand each other. So behaviour on the field doesn't match the need of the C-suite and vice versa, and we just spend our whole life misunderstanding each other. So getting your scoreboard clear and visible, as well as individual scorecards, way more difficult in business than it is in sport, right? It actually takes a lot of work. And then the third part of the formula for part 3 is the preloaded calendar. Setting up your year and scheduling as many of your team meetings, your reviews, your tune-ups, best days for vacations, and thinking of your organisation as as a interconnected ecosystem. That's the 3 parts of the formula: code, relationships, process, and each one deserves and needs time to think, build, maintain, and review, right? What's engineer? Design, build it, and then maintain it. To maintain it, you've got to have a cycle of reviewing it, right? So I think if the 2 things that if the viewers want to walk away with most is build your code and define your scoreboard and make it visible. Those 2 things combined, because then you've got your code and your scoreboard. So your code drives your scoreboard. Behaviors drive your results. This is a big Achilles heel. No one knows what the scoreboard is in their organisation, so they're playing blind, and it creates a lot of chaos and misunderstanding and misalignment.
So good. So good. Hey, we have a rapid fire segment to come home strong here, where we go through values, habits, and beliefs. So number one question, first and foremost, what is your number one value and why?
Number one value today is now courage. It used to be curiosity, and it's really in my genetic makeup, curiosity. So I don't really need it to be because it is just me. Courage is my is my newfound one, because when I have not been courageous, it has created bad outcomes. And when I have been courageous, I think there's the saying, easy decisions, hard life, hard decisions, easy life. That's whacked me in the mush a few times in my life. So courage is my new number one.
Beautiful. What about a core belief that's really shaped who you've become?
The energy you give off is the energy you get back. So my first company, Aussie X, teaching kids footy in schools, what they really were purchasing were our core values. Having a go, good on you, mate, and you little ripper. And the main one that caught on was good on you, mate. We had each child got a silicon wristband with good on you, mate on it. And good on you, mate's value was the energy you give off is the energy you get back. And it ties into having a go, which you appreciate. Having a go is the core value of try something before you make a decision. Like I find kids sometimes like, I don't like that. Well, do you know yet? Like have a go and then let's have a conversation. And then of course they jump into having a go and then next thing I know, the subconscious kicks in and they're loving life, right? So the two are quite synonymous for me. And I've been proud of when I look at my sort of journey, I've had a go at many things. It's been pretty fun. I just wrote a children's book for my son, Eat as the Enthusiastic Emu, and it's come up beautiful. And I might even publish it. But again, I think it comes back to the energy you give off is the energy you get back. It's just simple. The world works for you. If you give it enthusiasm and energy, that will go to the grave with me, that one. Yeah.
Courage and curiosity are both built into that as well with some of the stories that you just shared. Like your values are built into that, which I love. So what about a habit, ritual or routine that you can't live without, whether it's a daily habit, daily routine, right out to an annual tradition that you maybe do with people?
It would be I have an old phone that doesn't go online, like an old phone. So it's my alarm. My alarm is like 10 steps from where I am in bed. So the ritual is when I get out of bed, when the alarm goes off at 4:30, I don't want to get up at 4:30. There's not really a day, I would say maybe 20% of the time when the alarm goes off, I genuinely want to get up, right? But because it's a walk away and by the time I get to it, I'm near the washroom. And then the first thing is completely cold water, and it's freezing here in Toronto right now, straight in the face, and just, oh shit, I may as well stay up now. That has been the secret to my existence. Because sometimes, I had dinner the other night, I got home at 11:30. Alarm goes off at 4:30. Did not want to get up, but it does it. So I have a bit of extra sleep the next night, but I've just found that getting up at the same time is very, very good. Irrespective of the night before, you've got a bit of sleep debt. I got me whoop, understanding that. But that walking to the alarm and then just immediately, habitually, that's critical.
Really good.
The rest looks after itself after that.
Just through that, everyone.
Yeah.
Dude, hey, I really appreciated you coming on the show. Where can people go to find out more about the work you're doing?
Yeah, cooperationworks.com or emilestudham.com. Probably the easiest way, I think, to get deeper in or a little bit deeper into our work is watch our TED Talk. We can probably post it up on whatever channels you're doing here. Funnily, not by design, but the talk is it's actually encapsulated sort of my journey into this work, a little bit about me Aussie X days, my challenges and the loneliness that I found through leadership, and then getting into this work and having the privilege to work with teams now. And then it talks about the 3 parts of the formula. So it actually shares our philosophy and it shares that beautiful, simple habit of catching the good. And I think our world would be a better place if we just leaned a bit more into catching the good first. Still have the conversations about what's not working, because that's where the growth usually comes from, the mistakes. But if we catch the good a little bit more, like I said, I think our world, and it can be the start of dinner. Like we have dinner tonight, and I'm going to change up the noun every now and then. What was the highlight of the day? 2 stars and a wish. whatever it is, but our dinners always start with a catch the good story. And then before bed at night, we've got our little journal, and I say, right, Mama, what was your highlight for the day? And we write it down, and we have a little moment before I go to bed together, we're like a family of cats here at the Studhams. But I just find that the last thing before you doze off in the morning, to have a little moment with your family about what was a highlight. And then I always end the night, we turn the light off, and I say, I believe something wonderful is going to happen tomorrow. And that's a great way to end the day.
Dude, it's so good. The first thing in the morning and the evening. So what Brittany and I do, something somewhat similar. I love those that you do. And I love that you're doing it with your family, like your kids, and they're having the opportunity to learn that and grow through that. It's incredible. Brittany and I, first thing in the morning, or whenever she's up, I'm usually up a bit earlier. So whenever we're there, or she's over in a different part of the US right now with family, and so we're apart from each other. But basically the first text is, what are you most excited about for today? That's the first thing, right?
Yeah,
what are you most excited about for today? And that's the first thing that we talk about. And then basically the last thing at night is, what did you love most about today? You know, so something similar. And it is so good to start that and end with that, because it sets you up for a nice night's sleep. That even if it's been a crappy day,
100%.
even if most of the stuff hasn't been graded, you know, and sometimes the thing in the morning is, you know, you got to bed at 11:30 and got up at 4:30. Sometimes the thing you're most excited about is having a nap today or getting to sleep tonight, and that's okay. It is, what are you looking for? But just that training your brain to find the good and then catch the good would be to utilize your phrase there. So it's training your brain to find that, to focus on that. Where focus goes, energy flows, and the ability to be able to train those neural pathways to ingrain in those specific directions. Because numerous studies have shown now that we have the ability that the brain is plastic, right? The
100%.
neuroplasticity is there. So love it. Dude, it's been so good catching up. Thanks for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Cam. Great to see you, mate, and look forward to seeing you in person in a few weeks' time, buddy.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Again, real pleasure. And yeah, for those listening, we'll link to everything that's been mentioned in the show notes at CameronAtlas.com/podcast. Hey, we got some great new guests coming up, so make sure you hit that follow button, leave a comment, and until next time, go and write the next line in your story. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time here on The Edge of Possible.